Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. I'm here with Peter Hostrasser. I'm Allie Dahl. Peter, what is going on? Because we're starting a new series.
Yeah, yes. So when this comes out, it's springtime, which I love because it's like when people are tired, yet you still have to push and push through the end of the year in a traditional sense, but also just talking to people who have probably done things the traditional way and then are kind of tired of them and ready to do some different things. So I'm excited about this conversation. Everything's going well. Our internship program is we are trying and learning so much this semester. It's an exciting time. We have some students who are working as our own interns, building some platforms, some ed tech for ourselves, which is, I think, a very interesting thing that I think we're going to see more of, but that'll be on another podcast. But everything's going well.
Great. So you said right before we hit record, you have a hot take that you're going to kick this off with. So I'm just going to let you go there and then introduce our awesome guest to light things up.
Right. Okay. Well, here we go. Our guest, I'm just going to say it's Mark Covell. He's here. Hi, Mark. How are
Hi,
you?
Peter. Hi, Allie. Great to be here.
So I know that you're going to tell us your background and a little bit of that, but I wanted to just open up this whole conversation. Well, number one, thank you for being here. This is amazing that you're taking some time out. We met at the ACTE conference. A lot of different people there. Um, Ken and well, why
Cindy?
can't I think of her name?
Cindy.
Yes, we're both there. And I was like, wait a minute, this guy works with them, so I'm in. Here it is, right? Here's my hot take. You came to CTE after spending most of your career in classic K-12 education spaces. You had certain perceptions. I'm actually reading a LinkedIn post that you put up a couple days before this podcast. Had certain perceptions about CTE that were dated, uninformed, and limiting to students. When I joined a CTE environment, it was less than a few weeks before I had the realization that I would never return to classic K-12 education. Hi, Mark, explain.
Hi, Peter. So, I'll go a little bit into my background. So,
Yeah.
I grew up in the north suburbs of Chicago. Got the Chicago sign behind me here with the street map, um, and always called Chicago home. And went to high school at huge suburban high school in the north suburbs of Chicago, and that was in the late '90s. And that was the heart of the college for all push. And so it was not if you were going to college, it was where you were going to college. And so that was my path, and I was happy to follow that path and went to school and collected a bunch of degrees and am thrilled with the path that I took. Still paying for that one. These two are paid off, but that one not so much. And so I had a classic training. I was a secondary education English double major at Boston College. Had an incredible experience, lifelong friendships. Just saw some of my classmates just a few weeks ago from BC. So I have no regrets from that respect or perspective at all. But my training, I had no exposure to career technical education at all in my classic training for classic pedagogical training. And so in Pennsylvania, where I am now and where I settled and make my home now, uh, we generally speaking, we have a couple of different types of career and technical centers, but generally speaking, we have centers that are broken up regionally. In my particular area, there's 9 school districts that send to one county school. That's not the one where I work now. We can talk more about that one in a moment. But where I was working as a classic, I was an English teacher, ninth grade English teacher, yearbook advisor, and really loved that job and thought that I was going to do 10 years in the classroom, 10 years as a building level leader, 10 years in central administration. There's my 30 years. That's my career. Take my pension. And that was going to be what my path was. Um, and I would send students to the Career Tech Center. And in fact, I taught the Tech Ed English class. And so that was the class that those of us that have built schedules in the past know that there's always those singletons that you have to, that make or break a schedule. And so I taught that class. I knew those students, and I thought I knew what the Career and Technical Center was. And so as my career progressed and I got my principal's certificate, principal positions are not ubiquitous. There's only a few in an area, and there was a principal position that opened at our local career tech center, and they have while they're a shared time CTC, they also have an academic component, and so they had a principal position to run their academic part. And listen, I love to learn, and I was fascinated by the idea of going to the career tech center to learn about career education, but still have that connection back to classic K-12. And so if I wanted to transition back, I easily could. And if I wanted to learn more about career tech, I certainly was going to be doing that. And the Career Tech Center here in our area is one of the largest in Pennsylvania, if not one of the largest in the country. And that's where I met Ken and Cindy, unironically. And so it's a great career tech center. But when I walked into the doors of the Career Tech Center, it was like I never knew what I didn't know before that moment. All those perceptions about those kids that are right, quote unquote, to go to career technical education, or the tech students, or whatever the title might be, went out the window, because what I saw students who were married with their passion. I saw students who had agency in their learning. I saw students who were willing to go a mile deep and put in the grit, the effort, to understand the complex language, to make sure that they understood the numeracy that goes into carpentry, to understand the literacy that goes into electronics, or healthcare. And so it blew my mind. It really did blow my mind. And what I say is, the students that I had in my tech ed English class were students that I wouldn't trust to go to the bathroom without a pass or be gone for more than 5 minutes. And yet at this school, we have them in a multi-million-dollar lab operating hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that is dangerous and potentially deadly. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not joking about that. And they're operating it professionally. They're passionate about their learning. They're on task. Light bulb moments are real in an electrical classroom. I mean, when a student wires up a light bulb, I just watched a video the other day. I saved it for my next presentation, because it's a student wiring a light bulb. The light bulb goes off and he's thrilled because he actually has that light bulb moment and gets to see the fruit of his work. And so you see these students whose work matters, whose learning means something to them, who in some cases, with some of the population that we were serving, might be able with that high school education to break a cycle of poverty that perhaps their family has been in for a generation or longer. And that's just with what they're learning in that high school classroom. And as we all know, there's opportunities in career tech ed to supersize your learning. You can go and get additional training, additional certifications, additional education, up through and including a doctorate degree if you wanted to. And so my mind was blown, and I really did in that moment. And it's not unique to me. There's been conversations that I've had with other people that have come from, and I sometimes will call it traditional K-12 ed, classic K-12 ed, regular ed, which I hate, but it's just sort of what we trend to, who have said the same thing, who have said, once you see students who have that agency in their learning and who are really invested in what's in front of them, you've never seen a student want to understand complex language more than a student reading a service bulletin on a vehicle that they're trying to fix, or problem solve an engineering snafu that they've run into.
Mhm.
And so, I'm not, when I say that, it's not hyperbole. I mean that deeply. And then from that point forward, I was an administrator in the academic side of the house, but then sought out as many opportunities to grow in the career technical side. And so then I started supervising career technical programs, learning about those programs. And then that was the path that put me on where I am now, which is a director, sort of like a superintendent with our nomenclature. So a director at a career tech center in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And that's where I am now. And it is the best job I've ever had. I absolutely love the work that I'm doing. I love the students that we're working with. I love um, their success stories, and not not unlike a lot of our colleagues, we're seeing huge interest in our school and our programs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about that more.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I wrote down that exact same quote that you let off with, Peter, because I was like, I mean, the whole I'm never going back to K through 12 education it's going to resonate with our listeners for sure. And it's interesting because while I haven't said that like in that way, it's so simple, it's brilliant. I have said, like if I ever go back to the classroom, it would need to be something different and not the traditional model. I mean, I feel like being on the Disrupt Education podcast, you have to kind of lead with that. So, for those who are thinking about, you know, your your path and CTE, especially for those who are listening who may be in a traditional model, right? Like your path, I love that you said, like, I had a plan. My plan was to do 10 years in the classroom, 10 years as some kind of admin, 10 years at the district level, and retire. And threw that out the window to do what you're doing now, which is great. So we're really interested in kind of like the leadership piece because you are now a leader in the space. So like help our listeners, how can they advocate for themselves or like what should leaders be doing to kind of like drive this movement? Because if you're even in the traditional space and you want to move towards this type of model, like where should we start?
So I think you came out with the heavy hitting question there. I mean, Peter's was great, but you
Mine
really
was a
went for it
jab.
there. No, so I'm going to start by saying this. Have an open mind. I think that the reason that I had such a strong or am having such a strong reaction is because I didn't have an open mind and I didn't have exposure to all the types of education that exist. Um, and I'll say that because I took that classic path, and again, no disrespect, but I thought I had the best of the best in terms of preparation and education. And so I thought what I was doing was a model or the model for modern education. I just come out of university. I have advanced degrees. I thought that was the right way to do it. And I'm not saying that what's happening in regular K-12 education is not great, and there's not great opportunities for everybody. But what I am saying is that that we when we said college for all, we might have accidentally said career technical for none. And that, and so now as a country, as a society, as people who like smooth roads and running water, we maybe have put ourselves in this position of the skills gap because we maligned those that were pursuing that. And what happens is then, the cost is much more later on when you go to get that training, privately or after the public, free option is gone. And so I'm going to come back to your question, Ali, by saying be open-minded to what's out there. I focus, and the posts from which you both were referring, that was about a speaking engagement that I have at FETC, the Future of Education Technology Conference in Florida, a huge educational tech conference that I would call a classic K-12 space. I've been focusing a lot of my energy and a lot of my speaking and a lot of my conversations in the regular K-12 ed spaces. It's why I love being here, because I mean, I know that both of you have CTE in your background, but I also know that there's a lot of classic K-12 eyeballs that are watching this. And so I want to be in those spaces so that people can hear that there are other options out there. But I also think too that one of the talks that I'm giving in Florida is how CTE is a surprising leader in content and pedagogy. How we learn by doing in CTE. There's no surprise that YouTube is the second most popular website that people find their way to after Google. It's because we love to see things. We learn by doing as humans. Whenever something goes wrong, whether it's a squeaky door or you need to change the time on the microwave and you can't figure it out, you're going to go to YouTube and have somebody show you how to do it. And so I think now we're catching up that that a pre-college training for everybody may not necessarily be the destination for all learners, and we may need to infuse. And I think we've seen it on the policy side of things in the last 10 years, where we've seen more. You hear now college and career readiness. We're always second. Career is always second. It's okay. We're going to get there at some point. But every single person out there is training for a career. College is just one of the certifications you're getting on your path. I can't do what I'm doing now without these. So I had to go to college in order to do what I'm doing now. And that's completely fine. But I think even as a student, I mean, I could reflect on this on a number of ways, but as a student, I don't think I had a ton of experience. And it's a little embarrassing now to have a check engine light go off in your car as the director of a career tech center and not know what it means and not be able to, to work your way through that problem. Or on the hottest day of the year when the AC goes out, not be able to problem solve that. And there's no amount of money you wouldn't pay to get that fixed, given those circumstances. And so I think, and then on top of that, you have a lot of focus and energy coming in from places like the Wall Street Journal, who just put out an article about the next millionaire class being HVAC entrepreneurs and plumbing entrepreneurs because of all the opportunities that exist. So, Allie, I promise I'll get back to your question. So, so those that are interested on the leadership side, I would say open yourself up. If you have a career tech center that you send students to, be curious. Go visit your students. I'm going to tell you, they will love to see you when they are doing their passion, right? Fixing that car, in the cosmetology lab, doing that hairstyle. They will love to see you and share that passion with you, because they have a lot of confidence in that space. And so visit those spaces. Don't cross them off the list just because maybe you see a job opportunity and it's not you feel like it may not be a good fit. Don't cross off the list. Explore, have an open mind. Those are the things that come to mind. And then, understand that, understand that it's an option out there, and a really good one, and one that leads to employability and a lot of opportunities for students. And then on the pedagogical side, and we could talk about a number of different things that make CTE unique and different, but that learning by doing, I tried in my English class, we tried to make authentic learning something that, was an everyday occurrence, but there was a lot of pretending. And in CTE, we don't pretend, we practice. We practice until we have a skill that that is a repeatable, accurate skill. And so I think there's something to be learned there as well. You'll see it in the science classrooms, of course, and you'll see it in the related arts courses as well. But I think that there's room to grow in classic pedagogical strategies to employ more learning by doing, because I think especially this generation too, really engages with that.
So, I mean, obviously you've got an amazing team of people. We met some of them. Obviously, we've talked to Cindy Midget. Her husband Ken isn't there, but is doing some amazing things as well. Mm-hmm. It was funny because I was literally just having this conversation this morning with my counterpart, Brett Thompson, about we're just going to rename it Career in College. We're just going to change it. Right. And I think some of our previous guests on our previous winter series, obviously TJ Vari, Jason Van Nuss, they all said college isn't just 4 years, right? College can be training, college can be, so just kind of redefining that. So I love hearing that and the learning by doing. Um, as a leader, so I think one of the things that if I'm reading between the lines here, one of the things that you would love to do is to take what you are leading right now and how can we expand it into and or help out K through 12 to traditional education. And if that's the case, um, you said like in your English course, like you tried something and it wasn't really the the pretend versus practice. I love that. How do we
Hmm.
get, yeah, how do we get more, when does the pretend turn into practice in your mind? And then what does practice look like even in a traditional sense that you can probably, maybe you have a few areas of, well, hey, what if you were in an English class now? How could you maybe do some practice rather than pretend?
Well, I think one of the things that that we've always known is that when students have voice and choice in their learning, that they typically will go further faster, right? And so trying to find something that ignites their passion in that subject area. Um, I'm thinking about, there's a group of students who, that traditional mindset, uh, they never really connect with. And so they have this tension with school, that they never, when you hear a student say like, I'm not good at school,
Hmm.
that's, I don't know that that's always the case. You're just not good at this type of school, right? You're just not good at, because we're all learning all the time. And so, I like to push back on that. In terms of pretending versus practicing, I mean, it's what we do every day in career and technical education, but we do have some areas, like medical health, where we have a lot of classic training that has to happen. You have to have a lot of theory before you get into a lot of practice, especially in the medical areas, medical fields. Um, we run a sports therapy program as well, so you're going to have a lot of theory that goes into that. But I think it's marrying the theory with the practice.
Hmm.
All of our classrooms, just by design, have a theory area and a practice area. And so, what are the practice areas in your English classroom? How are they actually practicing that? And I can tell you as an English teacher, so let's just talk about what career tech ed is, and maybe what was lacking in my English classroom. I'm not going to malign anybody else out there. But in the career tech classroom, you've got a group of folks that are part of your occupational advisory council. Those are people that are in business and industry who advise your programs. But if you have a really robust OAC, like Ken Midget did, like Cindy Midget does, they're more than that. They are starting points for your students. They are references for your students. They are research associates for your students. They are potential intern spots for your students. So those relationships as part of an OAC were absolutely incredible. I did not have an OAC in my English classroom. So compare that. I have teachers in the Career Tech Center who are content area experts who maybe have zero pedagogy,
Hmm.
as compared to my experience, which was all pedagogy and zero, expertise. I wasn't an author. I wasn't someone who had been published at that point. I was a 22-year-old college graduate, and so um, that difference between how the classroom is structured, those teachers come in with no pedagogy and have to learn all of the pedagogy on the fly. But
Hmm.
what I love about that is that what do they have to rely on? They have to rely on incredible student teacher relationships. They have to rely on content area knowledge, and they have to rely on some solid classroom management so that, the students know what they're doing. There's a structure to what's happening. Um, and then we provide that additional pedagogy both by them, going on to pursue their certification at the local college area, here in the area, but also through our work, in the school. So bringing it back, I never had an OAC in my English classroom. I never had content area experts. And listen, this is on me as an educator. Nobody ever said, Mark, you can't do that. Mark just
Mhm.
didn't do it, or Mark thought that he had all of the tools that he needed in his toolbox. And so I never had those content area experts. I didn't have those business and industry partners. I didn't have my students out. I mean, our goal at our school is to try to get our students in internships, in co-op, cooperative learning experiences. That wasn't my goal. My goal was for them to be compliant and pass for the year. I mean, just speaking broadly, of course, I had great relationships with students. Of course, I cared about them individually. Of course, I was at their events and games and was committing everything that I could to try to draw that interest out of them. But Shakespeare wasn't going to do it. And yet, I never tried to disrupt my classroom. I never tried to disrupt my curriculum. I only tried to comply with what I was taught. This is the curriculum. This is what we'll teach. And so I think if we could really let students have a voice in how they're learning. Literacy comes in so many different ways. Numeracy comes in so many different ways. And so, we talked about differentiating instruction. There's no differentiation like there is in a career tech class where you've got three levels of students with different levels of competency in different areas. They've got different skills checked off. They've got different safety checks done. That is differentiated instruction. Whereas I was offering maybe 1 to 3 different options in my classroom to try to differentiate my classroom. In the CTE space, it's just so much more dynamic than that. And then what I like to do is just remind people again, and that's from non-classically pedagogically trained folks, which means that it's possible. I don't mean that to put down or push up anybody. I mean that to say it's possible. And we do it all the time in CTE. So, those are some CTE elements that I think are really unique that the regular K-12 space. Listen, there's tens of thousands of hours of dialogue to have to try to understand, and there's not going to be one thing that I could say that fixes it all, right? But I just look at how we structure the CTE space. I have 21 programs. I have 21 OACs made up of over 400 industry and community experts in those specific field areas. And that's just from my little 1,000 student school, in the middle of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So it can be done. And there are people who are passionate about giving students these opportunities. And so I think we have to take advantage of that. And I think there is opportunity in the regular K-12 space to do that, to expand in those areas.
I think your background, the classically trained teacher, all the way up the classical, traditional, regular, whatever system you want to call it, to then realizing what you didn't get in your own educational experience and what the majority of people in the US experience, right? Like CT is just getting hot now. I mean, there's always been pockets of it, but it's really exploding. But because of your background, Mark, I really truly believe your voice resonates more, which is why we're so amped to have you up on the podcast, because it's like you can be that bridge, right? Like,
That's my hope, honestly.
yeah, no, and it's coming across, and it's really, really good
And I
in
said I
terms.
wasn't an author. That as I'm sitting here is really what I would love to write a book on and share that experience and share where I think there's opportunities.
I think you should. We should stamp it here and be like, okay, he put it out there, people. He's gonna do it.
I
We
actually just said it so that I could hold myself accountable. We'll see what happens.
You should. We know plenty of people in the space that want to help. Dr. TJ Vari's episode will have just come out before this, and he gives his phone number in the episode.
If you want
He
it, we'll give it to
he's,
you.
yes, he's authored 6 books. He has 2 more coming up, and
Great.
anyway, phenomenal guy. I think your work and just the idea of I'm never going back. I didn't have exposure. Um, you in the leadership position, that's really where I want to kind of shift to a little bit, because we have a lot of school leaders and people who work with school leaders who listen to the podcast. And, it's like, how can we lead in this space? How can school leaders lead the movement towards a CTE environment? Like what are some strategies there, are mindset things that you would suggest for particularly school leaders or those people who work with school leaders in maybe a more traditional setting, which sounds like the kind of work you're doing in speaking about. So what would be like a nugget or two or a story that you would share around that?
Well, when I give talks to, I gave a talk to a local economic development corporation, and what I left them with was, it's time to start speaking boldly about career and technical education, and it's time to stop with the tired mindsets about career tech ed. The career tech ed that we have now is not dark, dangerous, and dingy. It's clean, it's modern, it is lively, and by the way, it's lucrative. And if we are hoping that our students are successful, how are we defining success? If we're hoping our students are successful, we are hoping that they find their passion, get married with their passion, and can lead a productive life with a family sustaining wage. I hope that's our hope. And that's our mission in career tech ed. But I didn't feel like that was necessarily my mission in ninth grade English, in the ninth grade English classroom. I don't remember ever having that conversation about, let's think about the big picture. Let's think about what we're actually preparing these students for or to do or how to be successful. I would say things like, you're going to need to know how to do this in college. I'd say that all the time. I mean, that's no motivator, right? As compared to, if you don't fix those brakes correctly, someone could perish. That's a lot more. There's a lot more on the line than an empty threat about you might need this in college. So I think we need to speak positively about career technical education. And I think we need to reward students who make that choice. Some of our students who are high academic students have to push back against some serious questions about the decision that they're making, because I think that there's a mindset that it's limiting. And I would like to impress upon folks that it's not limiting. In fact, it opens a lot of doors. I think about a young woman named Emma who she actually just spoke on her teacher's behalf. We had a teacher nominated for State Teacher of the Year, and she came and spoke on her teacher's behalf, medical and health professions teacher, a fabulous instructor by the name of Sherry Appleton. And Emma came and spoke on Ms. Appleton's behalf. And what I love about Emma's story, and when I was talking with Emma's parents, at the same economic development conversation that I had students there to help share their experience from our Skills USA chapter. And Emma was one of the students. And I said to the folks there, go talk to Emma, because Emma now knows what she wants to do. Emma wants to be a nurse. She is in our medical health professions class. She's getting clinical hours. She's going to get advanced standing, but she knows what she wants to do. She doesn't think she wants to be a nurse because she's good at math and science and somebody told her that. She has seen a synthetic cadaver. She has been on rounds in a hospital. She has seen blood being drawn. She has cared. We've had students who've cared for patients who have deceased. I mean, these are real experiences that if that's not for you, you'll know. You'll have the opportunity, but you'll be able to know it when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, as compared to someone at that same talk I was at was a woman at the table who had their child in college, was 1 year into a career, and they hated it, and they were switching gears. And what a terrible outcome. And so I come back to what I was saying before, which is, if our goal is for our students to be successful, then exposing them to these things, we shouldn't be maligning whatever the decision is that they want to make, because they're going to learn. Maybe they're going to hit a boundary and need to bounce back from it. Listen, the average age of attendance for college in Pennsylvania is 26. 26. College is going to be there. It's always going to be there. If you want to make that choice, it's okay to make that choice a year later. It's okay to have a certification that gets you wage earning while you're in college. Learning and earning, I would probably not be paying for one of those if I had more wage earning while I was in college, but I didn't have a cosmetology or barbering license. I didn't have a welding certificate that could get me those things. I didn't have my inspection license on vehicles that could have made me money every weekend if I wanted to. And so instead of maligning those things, instead of taking those things away from students, instead of um, lumping students together as making a poor choice, let's celebrate them. Let's tell them they're doing a great thing by making this choice, a bold decision. We had a lawmaker who came in and spoke with our students, U.S. House of Representatives member, and he said, "You're making a bold decision by doing this, and in some cases, you're making a brave decision because people are telling you not to. But in doing so." You really are making a wise choice. If another gentleman in the CTE space, Mark Perna, talks about about students having a competitive advantage. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Students that have a certificate, who have wage earning capability right out of high school, that's a competitive advantage. Or if
Mhm.
you've got a portfolio of engineering, of 3D prints that you've done, of Project Lead the Way projects that you've shown multiple competencies in, then your application for engineering is not because you think you want to do it, it's because you know you want to do it. So you're going to be a more competitive applicant. You're going to be able to speak in an interview more deeply about it. And again, at any point in time, supersize that learning. You're in welding now, that's great. Go on to be a metallurgist. Go on to get a PhD in metallurgy. Go get it. That's great. But knowing how to bond metal together, man, that might make you a great structural engineer sometime. That might make you a really great architect down the line. And you've got a skill that you can always lean back on.
Mhm. I love how do we speak boldly? Thank you for saying that. I think we're having a lot of conversations on the podcast in this series and off the series with people we're meeting is about really and I can tell as an English teacher at heart, like those words mean a lot when you start labeling something a certain way, and let's just change it, it's clean, modern, lively, lucrative. I'd even add like this is choose your lifestyle way that the next generation. I really really thank you for saying that because it's going to add to Allie and my list of how we are kind of we're speaking about this. And it is interesting to see how things are changing. It is funny because I always get the argument, oh, if a student goes out of high school and then they don't go right into a 4-year college, well, they'll never go back. And I'm like, well, I did. I mean, I did go to a 4-year right after college or right after high school. My internship during my senior year, which is something that I thought I wanted to do, was I didn't like it, and it was my senior year. And then, I went into bartending and started trying my skill sets there. So, I did go back because I had to go back to become an educator as well. So I had to go back and add on to my degree. Um, this also takes community, right? Businesses, I don't know if you want to call them, like your community, people who taxpayers, etc., right? And so I kind of wanted to hit on that. In what ways is your community being built and helping your institution to give these students more experiences, not only just where they're doing some practice, because there is, but pretend, but they're doing practice. They're actually working with real pieces. Now, it's a difference when you have, I don't know, medical. I want to call it dummy. I don't know what it's called. It's something, right? What's it called? Cindy's going to be mad at me for this one, but and then actually going on rounds, right? We've had some of our students in cancer wards, like helping people with their transfusions and all these different things. That's experience. How do you build those? What are some ways as a leader do you lead that and build upon your community?
Well, I could tell you this, everybody needs employees. And so everybody.
Yeah.
And And so that's a great way to start.
Mhm.
I took a phone call from a gentleman in Michigan that I don't know how he got my information, but he said, I understand you train electricians. I need some. Like, listen, on I-80, from here to you, so does everybody along the way. And, so the good news is everybody needs employees and skilled employees on top of that. Um, just the woman who has the pleasure of cutting my hair to do this. She's been looking for employees. I mean, for the better part of 3 years, trying to find the right fit. And so looking for a skilled employee, and by the way, very lucrative. Um, the opportunity to sort of set your own schedule. Um, she's looking to grow her business and finding skilled, hardworking employees that were a right fit for her org. That was a hard thing to do. And so that's true across all sectors. And so I think that's a great way to open the door. And then, pardon the pun, but I also think opening our doors is a really important way to do it. So if you look at our social media for Middle Bucks Institute of Technology, MBIT, or my professional social media, you'll see a lot of interactions with folks that come in. I had a brain scientist in the building not that long ago, just wanting to learn about how our students are learning and their deep level of engagement. And so making sure that we give all of those opportunities so people can see us. I think it's really important also to tell our story and be present in those spaces. We build community a lot in our school with our social media presence. We think it's important that we tell the story, that people hear about us so that they see the true MBIT, so that they know, all of the opportunities that exist. So that has gotten, for us, it's been very powerful in increasing our reach in our community. But the other thing is that our students tend to stay locally, which is important for our businesses as well. And so we can provide them with information that, when they make an investment in our school or in our students, that there's a very good likelihood that they're going to be staying in the area and contributing to that field. And so, I think that's an important part of it as well, is just letting people know what the opportunities are, how they can contribute. We're working on creating a menu of options so that folks in business and industry, maybe not everybody can host an intern for any number of reasons, but they can certainly come out and share their experience. They can come out and do a job shadow for a student or do a day in the life with our students. They can take video calls. They can come in and sit for an interview with our students and have exposure. Just because you're in 21 programs doesn't mean that that's 21 career opportunities. I like to think of it as more like 21,000 different career opportunities. Carpentry isn't just building homes. It's preparing the site. It's all the things that go into it. It's all of the sales that go behind it. It's, there's so many different career opportunities within that field that we have to make sure that the students understand all of those opportunities exist. So back to the community building side of things, I also like to be as present as possible. I try to be in our chambers of commerce meetings, local business and industry get-togethers. I think it's really, really important that the career tech centers are in those spaces. Because here's the other pieces. I think a lot of businesses, when you sit back and you really evaluate a profitable private industry business, there's probably behind the scenes, most of the things that are having that business run are going to be powered by career and technically trained students. Whether it's your IT infrastructure, whether it's medical and health, if you're in that sector, carpentry to get your business up and running. Culinary, everybody has lunch every day. So there's just so many CTE components that are part of business and industry, that folks, when you really zoom out, you can start to see, okay, I'm going to need to be a partner in this. And what I ended up telling the gentleman from Michigan who asked about training for electricians, I said, you're looking for a 1-minute solution to the problem. You need to be thinking more like a 3-year solution. How are you going to create an environment where you're training the people that you're hiring? You're giving them an opportunity to come in, they're learning about your organization, they're invested in you, and then they want to give back. I think that's really where businesses need some education as well. And again, why I focus a lot of what I talk about on those areas, so that they understand this is not a passive relationship anymore. This is going to have to be an active relationship where, it doesn't just have to be giving money to the school, giving tools to the school, giving bulk materials to the school. It's going to be about making sure that students know that you are out there in the marketplace. If you're going to be vying for these skilled employees, you're going to want to make sure that they know who you are.
100%. I feel like this conversation has gone by way too fast. I'm like, I still have more questions. Mark, this is phenomenal. The work that you're doing, and the power of your voice and sharing what you're sharing, it's really, really coming across. And I want this episode to come out now. Sadly, we get to hear it now. It's going to be a little bit before it comes out. So we kind of flipped this podcast. I don't usually open, Peter usually does. So before we get your, where people can connect with you and kind of wrap up the conversation, Peter, I'm going to have to ask you, you knew it was coming. What are your final thoughts?
That's why I got my notes. Yeah, there are so many things here. I really enjoyed hearing your story of a traditional K through 12 educator, and then really seeing something different. I think one of my biggest takeaways is anybody and everybody, especially leaders in education, as you said, Mark, was being open-minded. And the other thing is exposure to all education, different ways of education. I think that is super important. And we're probably going to name the podcast that how to expose to all education, because I think that we are so in a traditional system. I came through it as well, and you're so just your blinders are on, and this is the way it should be. And that opens up a lot of possibilities for innovation, for creativity, curiosity. And when I say that, I don't just mean on the education or the educator's part, but I also mean giving those students voice and choice in their education, which was another thing. And honestly, I mean, I just love the way that you took the old, dark, dreary CTE and really just basically, well, you made it clean, moderate, modern, lively, lucrative. That's what we really need to be saying, because it is. And we really need to be telling the truth here, and giving people those options. And also, we didn't discount college here. It's not a discount. It's an addition to this. It can be something to take you in a different direction. But you can also, like you said, the new millionaires, you can stay and be that welder and be a millionaire. It's very, very possible in this day and age. So many good things. So many good things.
Oh, many good things. And the lesson I'm taking from this one is, because you're not our first converted English teacher.
Yeah.
But I actually, truly, I think CTE didn't know how much they needed like classically trained English teachers to really kind of get the messaging right, because that's a gift that maybe like I don't have. I wasn't an English major, and the terminology and the marketing, the branding, the voice of how it gets portrayed and communicated is a huge component of why I think the CTE explosion is happening right now. And it's definitely due to voices like yours, Mark, and other converted English teachers, I think. So,
we're going to make a support group.
Yeah.
You really should. So how can people connect with you? Not to like phone you and be like, hey, can you provide, students in Michigan, but how can they connect with you to learn about the work that you're doing? What's the best way our listeners can stay connected and get into all of the amazing things you're doing around?
Sure. I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can find me by my name on LinkedIn. I'm the proud director at Middlebucks Institute of Technology, where our students find their ambition at MBIT. And so you can find us online, mbit.org. All of our socials, we're on every social platform. While we still have TikTok, we're going to hold on to it and keep making our TikToks. We also employ interns to help run our social media, which is the best. And actually, a student came up with this, which is why I love to show it off. Mm-hmm. And so, you can find me on there. And if you're interested in having me have a conversation with you or your organization, I'm happy to do the same as well. So find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I'm most active on there.
Perfect. Okay, so we really did plan this out of me, switching roles. I'm going to do my best, Peter. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into this episode. It's been amazing. This is totally going to kick off this second part of our series of setting fire to educators and just setting fire to systemic conventions that don't work. And I just think that we need more voices like Mark, and we really want this shared out. So please like and subscribe. And for Peter Hostrasser, I'm Allie Dahl. We'll catch you next week on the Disrupt Education podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.